Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about the Gospel of Mark. I highly recommend you check out the episode we did on Matthew and the future episodes on, of course, Luke and John. Let's begin with a prayer. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, secutor in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. All right, so Mark. Mark is the shortest one. I like to think of Mark as the boom, 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 boom. Let's just get it done. It's very clean, very neat. It's maybe doesn't have the flourishment of the other three, but it really talks about the ministry of Christ. And it's meant to show Christ as this dynamic healer, exorciser of demons, and so forth. And it gets the point across. All right, so who is Mark? Mark is considered to be a disciple of Peter. So in some ways you can call Mark Peter's gospel. Even Peter in his epistle, 1 Peter 5:13, mentions Mark. Sometimes he's known as John Mark. What else do we know? We know he's the cousin of Barnabas. That's mentioned in Colossians 4:10. And we also know that he was a companion of Paul in Paul's first of his 4 trips around Asia Minor and Greece. And that's mentioned in Acts 13:5. So his gospel is like Peter's gospel. So he wasn't eyewitnessing what was going on, clearly, because he was not one of the 12 apostles. But Peter, likely before Peter's martyrdom, which we'll talk about in a second, he chronicled it to Mark, and then Mark wrote it down. What else do we know? We know that probably Mark went to northern Egypt to establish some churches over there after the martyrdom of both Peter and Paul by Nero around 67 AD. All right, when was it written? Historically, church father-wise, there's a reason why we have the order of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because the early church fathers thought it was written in that way. But more modern scholars have thought that it's the first gospel that was written. And some scholars think it was written as early as in Tiberius' reign in the 40s and 50s. Most say it was written in the 60s. We'll talk about this in Luke. I didn't talk about this in Matthew, but the general consensus for a long time until up to kind of recently was that Matthew and Luke had Mark's Gospels when they started writing their own. They also borrowed from a source called Q. But Mark is traditionally known to be the first one written. Just like in Matthew, Mark doesn't talk about the destruction of the temple. He prophesizes, or Jesus prophesizes, that it's going to happen. So that lets us know that certainly it's before AD 70 when the temple was actually destroyed by the Romans. A lot of scholars believe that he wrote the gospel after Peter died around 67 AD during the persecution of Nero. So probably 67 to 70 AD, maybe that's when it was written, but we really truly don't know. Now my canaries are going crazy. Who did he write it toward? Well, he wrote it mostly to Gentiles in Rome. Think about Peter was hanging out in Rome. This could have been during the Nero persecution. That's why you see a lot of kind of the themes of you're going to be persecuted if you're a Christian, take up your cross and things like this. So he is writing to Gentile Christians, unlike Matthew, who is writing to Jewish Christians. You see this because he explains a lot of Jewish traditions, Mark does, that you definitely don't see in Matthew. Matthew makes the understanding that they know what they're talking about. You see a lot of kind of quotations from the Septuagint, much more in Matthew than you do in Mark. So Mark's audience is probably persecuted Roman Christians during that time in the mid to late 60s when Peter is eventually martyred. What else? Look, I think Mark is, and I'm not going to say this in a bad way because it's the Gospels. It's like, what's your least favorite ice cream? Mark's my least favorite of the Gospels, and I think maybe just because John is so beautifully written, and Luke is considered to be beautifully written as well, and Acts because Luke wrote Acts. And I just like Matthew. I mentioned in the Matthew episode that it's my favorite of the Gospels. Mark is just kind of like a quick read. Like if you have to tell a 10-year-old, let's read a Gospel, give him Mark, because Mark's short chapters. Jesus cures the blind man. Jesus takes out this demon. Just boom, 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 boom. Works. The other message you see in Mark is kind of the secret message, right? He doesn't want anyone to know he's the Messiah. That's kind of a running thing. Maybe it's because, the old idea by the Jews was that the Messiah was going to be this military guy like David and come in and kick at all the Romans. So maybe he didn't want to kind of lead into that misconception or so forth. But that's one of the gospel themes, he did this, but don't tell anybody. So you kind of see that running through it. Also kind of the proclamations that he's the son of God and so forth. You see that. But as a whole, it's my least favorite. That's not saying a lot because I read it. I do a constant rotation of the 4 all the time. But it's just maybe a little too dry for me and for my taste. But that's all I got to say about Peter's gospel according to Mark. Guys, post in the comments. Let me know what you think of the gospel of Mark. Add whatever you think that I've missed. Please hit the notification, subscribe, and share button. Share with like-minded people. And as always, take care, God bless, and pray.